Welcome. I'm Jenny Sauer with the End User Tools Group, and I am here to present to you the box tree moth trapping and visual data collection using ArcGIS Field Maps. That's the mobile application. This is the much anticipated training for that, and bonus, you get 2 for 1 because both trapping and visual are contained within the same map this year. So we have that going for us today. All we have to do is look at one map, and you should have on your end of this, you should have a mobile device that you're going to feel comfortable using. That could be an iPhone or an iPad or even an Android device that will allow you to download this free app and use it. You should feel a little comfortable with field maps. It was new to us last year, and so some of you may have used it last year, and you want to make sure that you're feeling pretty good about using the app itself, that you've had some practice or you feel pretty refreshed in use. We have some training, so I'm going to put those links in the chat real fast. Let's get that chat open here. I'll share a link to where you can find lots of training and also a quiz today. The final of the three things you all should know, you should have a device, you should feel familiar with field maps itself, and you should feel very secure in the survey protocol. And in this case, it's Russ Bulluck, who is your National Operations Manager. I know many of you know Ted Lewis, my friend. Good to see you here on the call, who is also an excellent point of contact for box tree moth. So you have resources there if you need them. I'm going to show you these 2 links that I've just thrown in the chat and what they look like. So the first one is the mobile data collection tools. Just so I don't distract myself, I'm turning my camera off, but just know I'm here. Okay, so the first link is the Mobile Data Collection Tools website. This is an APHIS public-facing website. So you can look at this from any browser, any time of the day, anyone can. So everyone has access to this web page. And we have at the top half documents. There are training events here, which some of you may have used to come to this training today. It's listed by pest program. There's box tree moth, and there's the link to join. So in case there's others, there they are listed. You can locate their dates and join at will. Going back to this main page, I'd like to point out also the pest program specific training documents. And I'm going to pop over there to show you, you also have box tree moth documents that will help you. So there is a user manual and a quick reference guide. The user manual goes into pretty good detail, screenshots, step by step, and the quick reference is like your cheat sheet for the field. So after you feel comfortable, if you like to have a few things out there in the field, these 2 are available to support you. Back to that main page, all the way down to the bottom, we have a video gallery. And this training here today that you and I are going to do is recorded, and it will show up here in this video gallery. It's categorized under pest programs, but since it will be the latest, it will show up probably right here where this mobile link sign-in video is. You can also search by title. So if I were to look now, I'm going to find last year's BTM training. There we go. There's 2022. So that will come down and you'll get a new refreshed training video here. If you or a colleague had to miss today, you could find it here. Many are finding this useful maybe a month in or a couple weeks into doing some data collection, just to be sure you are on track and you've refreshed all of your training for BTM and you're doing that right. So lots of people like to look at that video. Finally, I mentioned feeling comfortable with ArcGIS Field Maps, the application. You can find both a user guide here under the general training documents and a whole video series. It's listed under foundations, but a whole 10 video series that you can walk through field maps use. So I would recommend that you've at least done this series once, and you can step through a couple minutes at a time as you want. But if you feel pretty comfortable, I would recommend a few videos. Make sure that you understand the disconnected workflow. downloading a map area, maybe collecting data is feeling pretty good, but also the daily data sync. So that's all part of working well, not connected to Wi-Fi, these 3 videos. So I'd recommend having a look at those one more time if you want, if you just want to pick and choose. Otherwise, feel free to take advantage of that. The second link that I put in your chat box for you is this quiz, and it's not required. This is kind of for both of us, for me and you, we both kind of benefit. For one thing, it allows you to test your knowledge while everything is fresh. And I give it to you right away because I don't want to put pressure on it. I don't want you to feel nervous about it. I really want this to be a tool that helps you remember what we learned together today. And the third question down asks you to input your email address. This, if you type it carefully, once you hit submit on the quiz itself, it will automate an email back to you based on your answer here. So type it carefully. It will say something to the tune of, congratulations, you completed box tree moth training. So that could be helpful. Maybe you like to keep track of those kind of accomplishments. I know I do, everything counts. Or maybe your supervisor would like to see that, that little email that just shows you have participated in training. Also, this little quiz gives me some kind of way to tell whether what I'm saying is coming through to you. So it helps me out too. So that's that. These 2 links that I've placed in the chat, for those that maybe join a little later, they might not see them. And so I'm going to try to remember to add them again at the end. If I don't, please someone remind me, and I'll make sure to add them again to the chat so everyone has those. First things first, I already told you, you have kind of 3 steps of your own. You want to make sure you have a device, that you feel good with the application and survey protocol. Another thing just to think about is planning out. I think of it like planning a road trip. Just take a moment and think about your route. Think about collecting data as if it's a road trip. And there's preparation involved in a road trip. The first thing I think about is snacks. And maybe I should probably also, as a geographer, be thinking about my route. So she's got her map out and she's thinking about, maybe it might be the fastest way, it might be the more scenic route that you want to take. If you wanted to get from the top of this mountain, for instance, down to another top of a mountain, you can't just fly across, right? You might have to zigzag a little to get over there safely. So you want to just think about, possibly you can't always take the path as the bird flies or the easy one, but you want to take the right one. And data collection is no different. It might shorten your planning phases, or you might find yourself on autopilot, but today we're just going to pause a little bit and try to think about the best path to field electronic data collection and success. So I want to just briefly talk about that. The things that we're going to talk about today, I mentioned the Field Maps application. I am going to walk through a little bit of the sign-in process, but you have videos, as you saw, that can help you through that. We'll overview the disconnected workflow, what's expected, what kind of planning is involved there. We'll talk about the map layers in the map itself. I told you there's trapping and visual layers, so we're going to look at those. I'm going to do a demonstration where we'll walk through and add some data ourselves so you can see what that looks like. And then I have a few reminders always at the end, just some things to pay extra special attention to. All right, so field maps itself. ArcGIS Field Maps, as I said, you have a user guide and some videos that you can walk through if you want to feel a little bit more comfortable. It is specifically designed to work as a field application, right there in the title, right? And while disconnected from Wi-Fi. It's expected you'd be out in a rural environment, so it's especially designed to support that. When you first tap that icon, you get something that looks kind of like this little screenshot here. You have the option to sign in with ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise, or skip signing in altogether. And here with the federal government, we use the Enterprise portal. That affords us the ability to enter PII, or private or personal information, and it protects it under FedRAMP security. So we're always going to tap that what's in the red box, the enterprise option. The first time you tap that, you get kind of these last two, these bottom two options pop in. It'll say specify a new URL or scan code. And we're going to specify a new URL, which opens up a little text box and your keyboard, and you have to carefully type in a URL. Now, all of you can see, I'm going to give it a little arrow here. There is a URL here in my example, and that's because I previously typed that in with care. So Field Maps does try to help you out. It tries to hold on to entries that you've added before, and it's done it here for me. So now I've tapped in this enterprise option, and these are the options I've got. So I can just go ahead and tap the URL, and that will sign me in. So that said, there are two URLs that you might choose from, and this is important. In fact, as a hint, it's a question on your quiz, and something that you want to keep straight. So my group End User Tools creates a map for official data collection that is hosted on the production, we call it, or this top official URL, or we call it sometimes a portal. So the production portal has this URL to sign into, but we also create another version, a copy that you can use for training or for practice. Or like today, I'll use the training version just to demonstrate. And the purpose of that is to let you get some practice in and feel comfortable, and also, maybe some exercises in the field as you're training, but not to mix up training data or play data in the official site. So what you want to be especially careful of, and I'm going to give you a couple little boxes here so you see the difference, is that if you are entering official data, that should happen here in this production sign-in. And if you are just playing around or practicing or demoing, make sure that you are in this bottom one. We call it the stage environment. And see the difference there, maps.mrp.usda, that's the production or official portal. Maps-stg, or think of that as stage.mrp.usda. This is our staging environment or our training portal where all the training maps are held. So just be sure you're in the right one when you're entering that kind of data. So that's just a little thing there. We will be working in the training version or the stage portal, as I said, and I'm going to show you a couple of really quick ways to tell that you're in that stage portal. First of all, the titles of those maps begin with the word training in all caps. And also the base map, the map background that you look at in a training version is just a light gray, and much more vibrant imagery in our official production portal. So you can tell almost right away. But having said that, you can tell, if you're in doubt, sign out, make sure you're signed into the right one. And I'll show you how to do that too. Some of us have to sign in these days. What will come after that whole typing in the URL is probably a button like this, and you'll want to choose, again, under the enterprise login, you'll want to choose this blue button, eAuth account, and then we'll get an option that looks sort of like this. These days now, we must choose mobile link, and we know that's a little complicated. So be sure that you get CEC support. Again, there was a video on this process signing in as well. Unless you have an exemption, and then you can choose this bottom login with user ID and password, and you'll type it in manually. So I'm just going to mention that because that is something that we need to start choosing unless we have a PIV exemption and can do this bottom option. But that's how we sign in. All right, back to this lady. Remember her planning your route? So getting up that mountain might mean some thinking ahead. And again, the same thing applies to using a device to collect data out in the field. But in this case, it's just a couple steps, honestly, to be sure that you're all set. And then it's a pretty smooth ride. And what I'm talking about is that disconnected workflow. And what's in this red box is your prep steps. You'll want to be sure that you're connected to a reliable Wi-Fi connection. And then an area of interest, offline map area, is downloaded to your device while you're connected to Wi-Fi. And then you probably want to, I have this bottom little bullet point. I always want to disconnect from Wi-Fi, but in the parking lot or maybe, at your car before you leave to go into the field, do some little parking lot tests and make sure that that map opens up and everything is working as you expect before you head out. But once that's in place, you really can go out into the field, collect data all day, come back in the evening or whenever you're done, connect back to Wi-Fi, synchronize your data, and then maybe that's when you would charge your device as well. So the important steps to planning your route involve downloading that map area ahead and being ready for that. So I'm just going to give that a little spin. Those are the important planning steps to your trip. Maybe snacks too. I probably should put snacks on that list. And then this daily data sync is critical. Box Tree Moth has an automation happening every night by the data group, and it is updating trap status or the schedule status on that trap. So the trap site that you input into it originally starts off as a current trap, and then 14 days after that entry or the last activity, it changes that symbology to due. So due for service or due for an activity. And that synchronization that you perform on your downloaded map area both pulls in that data and pushes out or up to the portal your entries. So that's a two-way synchronization. And so I would actually recommend doing this before you leave back here in the office prep area when you're connected to Wi-Fi. Update your map, and then again in the evening when you've come back. So this sync is really important to keep both your map up to date and that portal, the hosted map service, up to date as well. All right, the data layers. This is a screenshot directly from my iPad. And you can see the layers listed there. We have on-device layers. There's a markup layer, and this is a feature just inherent to or defaulted to ArcGIS Field Maps, the application itself. The markup layer is a layer literally that allows you to mark up the map over top of the surface. It is not an official data collection layer, so be careful there. And it really is only held in the device unless you find a way to share it. It's not easy to share. So it's really private to you. So for those reasons, it's not an ideal layer for you to use. If your supervisor tells you to use it in some way, that's a different story. But just be careful with that markup layer feature, not official and really remains private to you. The official map layers, though, here are listed below. We have, and if you're in Michigan, this layer will then say BTM MI instead of New York. And if you're in New York, you'll see NY. You've got visual surveys for this year, 2023. Trap sites for this year, 2023. We also have something we're calling map notes points, and this is similar to the markup layer, except for it is an official data layer, and it is shared with everyone who sees this map. So it is official. Use it to record hazards or information that might help other trappers or other surveyors out there. Be a little careful because remember it is shared, so make sure you're sharing appropriate information. And then you have two reference layers that are from last year. You have last year's visual surveys and last year's trap sites. So that's what the layers look like. Let's have a look at the iPad and see what the visual surveys look like to start with. All right, I'm going to close out of that. So this is my PPQ iPad, and I'm going to just go ahead and tap to open field maps. You just saw me close it. There we go. And Field Maps has held on to my sign in. And in fact, it pulled me all the way into the last map I was looking at. So I'm going to go back 2 times to that main map list. And you're probably already noticing all of these maps start with the word training. And it's still kind of loading. I've got a little kind of loading bar here up at the top. I don't know if you see that, but our thumbnails, there we go, they popped in. Also, all of these thumbnail photos have the word training in them as well. So I can see right away, good, I'm in training maps. I also know that I signed into the stage portal, that STG-STG URL. But if I was concerned or I wasn't sure, I would go to the profile here, scroll up a little bit and sign back out. Like I said, when in doubt, sign out. That's always a safe bet. I think we're good. I'm going to look for the BTM training map, and probably you already saw it. If I couldn't find it, I could kind of pull down and use the search box. There we are. And instead of a state, it just says ST. So this is our generic total training map for either New York or Michigan. I can see that I have offline areas that I've previously downloaded. It tells me right there. So I can open this map card, and I am connected to Wi-Fi. That's my Wi-Fi right there. And I've done that on purpose so that you can see, well, connected to Wi-Fi, I have listed an online map and the on-device or the downloaded map area. If I was disconnected from Wi-Fi, I would only see on-device, and that would be what I've got there. I've renamed it BTM, and Windsor is my central location on the map, and then street is my level of detail. That's just kind of how I name things so that I know what they are. You might have a different way of keeping track of your offline areas. If I wanted to download another offline area, I would, while connected, I would use this online map and go ahead and add an offline area. So I could add another if I wanted to, but I'm just going to go ahead and open the one I made previously, and we'll have a look at that. And right away, I've got this synchronization button, this 2-arrow icon up here at the top right. That's my sync button, and that only shows up if I'm in an offline map. So that's a good sign that I have done this disconnected workflow correctly. I'm in an offline map. I have a sync button. And if I tap that, this is where I would go ahead and sync now. It would list all of my pending edits, which I don't have any right now. And this auto sync button should be off, as you see it is. I could toggle it on just by tapping, and I want that off. I don't want my device trying to synchronize if I don't have a good Wi-Fi signal. I want that to be in my power once I know that I've connected to a reliable network. So I'm going to keep that off, and I recommend that highly to you all as well. So that's the sync button. Then this next one is a stack of papers, or it looks like a stack of papers. It's your layers menu. And this probably looks familiar to the slide we just saw. We have 2 layers that are visible: visual surveys, trap sites, and map notes. And I'm going to go ahead and enable map notes too. And in this 3-dot or overflow menu, whatever is enabled on your layers menu, it's a really handy tool to look at the legend. So the legend appears here in this overflow menu. And here's what we're looking at for what's on our map. So you can see I've been playing around a little bit. I have pretty much one of everything on this map. And we can see the visual surveys are either this blue circle or this red diamond. We've got trap sites that are coming in as current, and every 14 days after that current placement, they turn over to due. And then this is an inactive one. And we'll talk a little bit more about trapping, but let's just look at visual for a second. So I'm going to close that up. With that layer enabled, the visual layer, and I'm going to just go ahead and disable the other 2 so you can focus on it. There we go. And scroll back out. So with only the visual layer enabled, when I tap this plus button or add button in order to add data at the bottom right, I've got the option first of whether I'm adding a negative or a positive. And just for the sake of being able to walk through it, I'm going to add a negative just by tapping it. That places that point or the symbol right under where I am. And I'm going to, just so that you can see where we are, I'm going to move that point way out here. So there's the point we're working with right there. And so that's our symbol. And then over to the left, we've got open a data form to enter data on that point or that visual survey. And some of these things are pulled in automatically. It automatically said no. We said it was negative. That makes sense. We also have asterisks showing up. That means that it is a required field. And some hints. Surveyor says, hey, put in your first and last name. So let's go ahead and do that. Again, I am not following survey protocol. I'm just going to sort of enter some things. Agency, I'll say that. First and last name, I can obey. Survey date. Survey date gets me sometimes, guys, so I'll just point it out. If you go back far enough, it won't let you enter anything outside of this year, but sometimes I happen to actually tap the wrong day. In order to return to today's date, there is this today button, and that'll pop you right back to today's date and time. And then I like to close this. So if you tap that field again, it closes the calendar view. And kind of my worst nightmare is tapping the wrong thing and then doing it again. I'm terrible at that. Survey comments, I'm just going to say test. And then there's a couple of groups here of questions, optional, address, details. If I tap on that line, it opens it up, and they are indeed optional. There is no required field, no asterisk here. And it pulled in the state for me as well. If you're in a Michigan map in the official portal, you will see Michigan here, but you can see those are generated by GIS. I'll close that up. And then the next one, the quality control report, is also controlled by GIS and editors. So that's not something you have to worry about. Let me check over our form, and we're going to go ahead and submit. And as soon as that's done, you probably already yourselves notice this sync button got a change. It's got a little dot on the outgoing arrow. So that means just at a glance, you do have something sitting on your device in your offline map waiting to be synchronized back. Let's say this positive, or this red diamond, needs to be changed in some way. In order to edit, I'm going to select that on the map. You might want to scroll in, zoom in with your fingers and make sure you have the right one. Look for a unique way to identify it. But let's say I need to edit it. This little pencil here at the bottom is a pretty good indicator that that's an edit button. That's true. You could tap there, or you could scroll up on the form that's appeared until you see edit and that pencil. And let's say it was, actually, I was not a state cooperator. I need to change that agency to USDA. And I might check this over just to be sure everything else is correct and submit. And that's how you'd edit a visual survey. All right, let's return to our PowerPoint. I want to talk a little bit about trapping surveys before I move on. There's a trapping workflow kind of idea to this, the way that this is entered. The first visit places the trap. It's got a data form that talks about the location of that trap, including the installation date. So it infers that the trap was placed. That's your first activity at that location. And it places that first symbol, that current symbol, on the map for you. That's your first visit and the data entry that occurs. All future visits are related to that first visit. So you first select that trap on the map, that site, and then there's a related activity table for all future activities. So that's how the data is entered. First, by placing the trap. Secondly, by selecting that location and adding an activity on a table. There is a workflow that sometimes gets us kind of confused, and that's when we have to relocate a trap. And that can happen for so many reasons, right? But for whatever reason, that original spot no longer works. So if you think it through, it makes sense. Obviously, you want to enter an activity on that first spot that you have removed the trap. And this is one of those automated workflows that happens every night as well. If you were to enter on a trap site an activity that it has been removed, the automation will then update that trap site symbol to inactive. It's been inactivated. So a lot of times you think, well, I've entered remove, it should disappear. And no, that's not the case. In fact, it should stay on the map. You should still see that symbol. But by the next day, when you've synchronized your map, it should be showing up as inactive with the last activity listed as remove trap. So that's really important data entry, and it's all part of the history of that old trap site. Last activity says remove, and it's showing up with a symbol of inactive. Then you go ahead, and I've got a little dotted pathway, walk to the new spot, and start all over by placing the trap, and activities can keep occurring on that spot. So that one sometimes gets us, but just remember to record that remove trap on the original spot, and then it should update itself visually, but you should still see that spot with all of that. All right, let's look back at the iPad and see what our trap sites looks like. So in order to do that, I'm going to go to the layer, and I'm going to leave visual surveys on, and I'm going to go ahead and enable the trap sites layer there. Okay, so now we saw some old ones that I pulled up, and remember this yellow diamond with the exclamation point, that means that one's due. And there's an example of an inactive trap site. Let's look at that by selecting it. And let's look at the activity table. And there we are. The last one was remove trap. Now, what did I do? That went fast. Let's start from scratch. Let's say we want to place a new trap. So if we want to add data, we tap the add button at the lower right. And now we have, since we have two layers active, we have the option to add a visual survey or a trap site. In this case, because that's what we're doing, we're going to add a trap site. So we're going to tap new BTM trap site. There we go. Again, it's placed it right under my location, which makes it hard for you to see. That's ideal. You want it to be under your location. I'm going to pull it out just a little bit just so you see it. Let's say we're in this neighborhood, adding a trap right there, and I'll update the point. Okay, so now here's our point that we're working with, and we have that first data form that I talked about. Same thing, we have hints, first and last name for it says FIST, we got to get that updated, huh? For surveyor, we've got some required fields. I'm going to go ahead and fill it out. Site name, I think I'm gonna just keep numbering these. I've got test 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to give the trap ID the same number, but you'll follow survey protocol. I'm going to choose from a list of hosts. I'm going to choose from a list of habitats. Let's see here. What sort of fits? Let's say a residential garden. I'm going to choose my agency. I'm going to type in my name. I'm going to skip install date for now, and I'm going to put a little comment here. Now we've got a couple of other defaults that got pulled in, year round as no. If I wanted to change that to yes, I could. I'm going to leave it. And the trap type and lure are there. Address details. Now in the official production portal, this address details is going to be required. Here in the training version, it's not. So if you don't have an address or something, you will have to enter something here. In this training version, I don't have an asterisk telling me it's required, but in the official portal, you will. So I'm going to go ahead and pretend I'm putting in an address, 1, 2, 3, 4. My street. If you don't have an address, you would put none or NA probably. I'm going to say Windsor. You all know I'm in Colorado, not New York, but I'll leave it alone. And this should have 80550 is the zip. You also have optional contact information. And this involves contact type, name, phone, email, with some hints as well. I'm going to leave that alone. And again, that quality control report, which is maintained by GIS or editors. So now I would go ahead and close everything up and check over my data form. Some of you are probably really having trouble with that one that I skipped. Let's see what happens. I'm going to go ahead and hit submit. And I have a message. Remember I skipped that required field? It's telling me it can't submit because it's missing an attribute. What it means is one of these fields. And if I tap view, it will pull that up for me. So let's do that. There we go. And it says, hey, you're missing the install date. And it gave me a nice red message. It's required. Okay, I'll put in the date. I'm going to put that in as today and close that up. I'll give it one more look. And now let's try to submit. There we go, that went through. Okay, so let's say that so we've placed the trap there, it's installed. Let's say that we need to go ahead and perform an activity on this one that's due. In order to do that, we want to select that trap site. So I'm going to tap it on the screen. There's my data form from that initial trap placement. And in order to access that activity table to add an activity, we can either tap this little link icon, or again, just similar to the edit, scroll on up until we find that. And there we can see that little link icon goes with the activities table. Again, if you're Michigan, it'll say Michigan instead of New York there for you. So we go ahead and tap that to open an activities table. And we can see it was monitored. It was last monitored on the 13th of March. Your whole list will be here for all activities on that trap site. I want to add an activity, so I'm going to tap the add button. And that opens the little activity form. Same kind of deal, it's much shorter, but there are required fields, as you can see, and a date and some hints. So I'm going to go ahead and fill that out. Agency, my name, the activity type. This time I'll replace the lure. How about that? Field sample ID, I'm going to say none. It wasn't required, but I just want to fill it out. The date, again, is today. And comments, I'm going to make sure that I know this is a test, give it a look over, and submit. So now we have managed to, I'm going to close all of these up. We've managed to place a new trap site down here. We added an activity to this one that is due. You can see it remains due. And that's why we want to go ahead and synchronize every night, because that will go back to current from the overnight automation. So we want that to happen. Just going back to that whole relocate process and have a look again at this inactive trap. What we've done here then last, if we go to that activity table, the last activity was removing that trap. And so that is the history of this trap, which is inactive now. So just to go back and pull that back together for you, that's the trapping. Finally, there is another layer that we mentioned. I'm going to go ahead and activate that, the map notes points. Now I'm going to go ahead and enable it so you can see it. These two little question marks came up. And so if we wanted to add a note for all other surveyors or trappers, the option is, if I hit add, I have the option to add a hazard note or an info note. And if I go ahead and I'm going to cancel that, I just want to show you the two that I have here. I've added one. This is a nice shady little park. So if I tap that to view what the note is, the note was an info. I did it yesterday. I'm just pointing out a nice shady spot that might be good for lunch or a break. This other one, the hazard, is just indicating maybe you don't want to place a trap here, maybe you do. There's it's a little farmer's ditch. There's a lot of foot traffic and animal life. So just some ideas of what you might use here. Just remember, it is a shared layer. So whatever you put as information or a hazard, everyone can see. It might be helpful to you. These are some ideas of how to use that. All right, so that's all done. Now back to this sync button. If I tap sync, you can see everything you and I did together today. Pretty awesome. There's our list. And if I needed to, I could go back and edit or make changes on any of these. And what I would do to synchronize, I'm just going to tap that blue button, sync. In this case, I've been connected to Wi-Fi this whole time. So you would go back, connect to Wi-Fi. I'm in my basement. It's excellent. I can just hit sync and everything works. It's great. So you would want to make sure that you get back to that location where all of that works. And you might have a much longer list that you have to wait for. It's a great thing to do while you're just kind of closing up paperwork, making notes, checking them with your supervisor maybe. And then just come back and make sure everything worked out here. And there we go. There's my little green check mark. So we looked at those data forms, some reminders. Make sure, once again, can't hit this hard enough, make sure you're signed into the right portal. If you're entering real data, be sure you are in that official production URL. If you are playing around and training or demoing like we did today, no biggie, just be sure you're in the training maps. So when in doubt, sign out. Be sure you're using that disconnected workflow and employing that daily data sync. It's your best chance forward for the best data collection. Be extra careful, like I am, always look at that data form one more time, check your date, make sure before you hit submit that you've done it well. We saw what happens when the submit button fails. It kind of walks you through a required field that you've missed and tries to help you out. Getting help, anything survey protocol, go to Russ Bulluck, your National Operations Manager. iPad, or I should say iPhone here too. Any device issues, CECIT supports our devices. If you're having trouble with access to either portal or the Field Maps application, always start with your supervisor. That's why it's in this order with a big exclamation point. Your supervisor is your best line of next steps. They might go to the local field GIS specialist. They may also use this email inbox, the webgis.connect. This is supported by a multitude of counselors. So you've got portal managers that are watching to help you there. So you never know what might come up, but these are the things that are here for you. Really, all things training, feel free to come to my group, the End User Tools group. We have a mobile data collection tools webpage. If it's not there, let us know. We want to make sure that you're getting the resources you need. And so always go there and check it out, which leads me to, all the things that we talked about today: signing in, the disconnected workflow, the map layers in Boxtree Moth, and the reminders that we went over. Make sure that you are testing yourself. So I'm going to put these links back in this chat box one more time, both the mobile data collection tools website and the quiz. Make sure that you're checking in, that all of this made sense, and that you're able to find the resources that you need. So that covers it for me. Boy, my voice is really going today, guys. I apologize, but I do want to leave it open to you. Of course, you can reach out to me anytime. So that's why my information is here. But do you have any questions at this point, or is there something that I could show you in different detail now? Feel free to raise your hand or type it in the chat. Anything at all that you'd like to see a little bit more on. Well, I see so many names here that are pros with other programs too. Feel free to reach out. As I said, I'll put us back on the Getting Help page because that might help you with some resources. And feel free to reach out at any time with any need. We want you to succeed out there, and just wish you the best of luck out there collecting data. Good luck and have a great rest of your week, everyone. Thank you.